Hi, everybody. I'm the Padre, and this is the Pritch. It's the Padre and the Pritch.
Yep.
And we're going to come to you as often as we can with as many exciting things as we can. And when they're not exciting, hey, it's the Pritch's fault.
Blame is really just blah, blah, blah with me.
But we're really trying to do some good, you know,
Right.
whatever, in whatever way we can. So, you know, you'll hit some things, you'll miss some things, and hopefully you can enjoy our banter back and forth. We're good friends, so we tease each other, and I don't listen to anything he says.
Which is absolutely true.
And he goes to the church where I preach or give the homily, so he doesn't listen to anything I say either.
I use it as a sleep deprivation clinic. Sometimes when I'm exhausted, but I do white drool anyway.
Well, we're trying to have a topic for each of our 30-minute podcasts. So today, I love alliteration, and I found this sentence which says that Jesus in his time came to the least, the lost, the last, and the lonely.
Wow.
So that pretty well sums up your life, doesn't it?
Well, I'm never lonely when you're in the
Yeah.
room mocking me.
Yeah.
So I feel so good about that.
So I was thinking, you know that I'll start off by talking about a film because it's an old one. In fact, it was produced in 1939, the year I was born, and it's an old film, and it was made for $1 million. Wow. But at that 1939, of course, that was laud, and they took a bath on the whole thing. It wasn't until some years later that they discovered this film had a great deal of more than just entertainment value. It had a teaching lesson, and it was the Magical King. It was well, I'll just give you the most famous line: "Toto, I have a feeling that we're not in Kansas anymore." The Wizard of Oz. Can you believe it?
Yes.
Have you heard about that before?
Yeah, because follow the yellow brick road, follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road.
So you probably watched it a dozen times.
I did watch it dozens of
Just
times.
to get the voice.
And I always consistently use, I mean, when you're sitting in a room full of very serious people in law enforcement and you go and you see something untoward happen in the community and there's somebody who's not real hip to it and you go, I don't believe we're in Kansas anymore, Toto. So,
And they get it.
and they all everybody bursts out laughing, which is really important.
Yeah.
You gotta make your points. And there was some brilliant lines in there and some really teachable moments about learning to love yourself and where is home
Yeah.
internally, right?
Yeah. It's a magical kingdom.
All right. Well, the guy Baum who wrote it had I believe, in the intention of Dorothy, who's lost in the world, and the world is, and her world in Oz, very scary, and she was facing, if you think about the onslaught of soldiers in there singing, oh, and then she's peeking up with the scarecrow and and the Tin Man. And
So they're the least, the lost, and the lonely. Those
Yes.
a scarecrow, a Tin Man, and what was the other?
A lion.
The lion.
Cowardly lion.
A cowardly lion.
Yeah.
So.
And until he got the medal, he had no idea of his inner courage. And the Tin Man, he was seeking acceptance and kind of the flexibility to be not so rigid. And then the Scarecrow was very flexible. And yet they all needed Dorothy to guide them to the look inside, the innerstanding. And she had to look for it for herself. I thought it was pretty powerful, and especially about being far away from home in a strange place.
So this is more than once I've heard you use the term innerstanding Where'd you get that from? Do you remember?
That I do, yeah. It was a kid, a fourth grade kid. I said, because I was teaching anti-bullying, Harry. I said, hey, don't overstand people, understand people. And one of the kids raises his hand and goes, Mr. Pritchard, don't you really think that what we need more of is innerstanding? And I went, wow.
Yeah.
A kid has more to teach me than my college professors, and because I'd never heard that word in a psychiatry book. I've never heard it in therapy usage. I've never heard of it before, ever. Never heard a book by that name, but innerstanding. And I think that what shocked me more than anything is that a neurodiverse kid, and I was with at Oak Hill School the other day. They were hilarious, and I was pointing out that about neurodiversity, which has to do with Frank Baum writing the Wizard of Oz and its impact, because all three of the folks in there have anxiety disorder, and which is kind of interesting. The Cowardly Lion, he's afraid of everything, and then the Scarecrow, and each of them has their own challenge, and Dorothy's just trying to find her way home, and the Scarecrow, and you remember, he was very diverse and
Afraid of fire?
afraid of the fires. So, but I think when I was with the kids the other day, one of them taught me a powerful lesson. I said, there's a book out, and I think it has to do with our many folks who are neurodiverse or different thinkers have loneliness issues, and they're lost in systems that can't appreciate them, and they struggle towards people that Christ could see them. He could see them. He knew their differences. He
could understand them.
Could understand them.
Well, I'm just shocked that the guy called you Mr. Pritchard.
Well,
That shows the neurodiversity.
that's a real deficit.
If he knew you that well.
Showing respect. But what happened with the kid was, I said, there's a book out called The Edison Gene about wisdom, and a young man in that book had never passed fourth grade education, but he amazingly had created the first philosophical society, the first debating society, the first lightning rods, the first stoves, the first eyewear, the first National Guard, the first fire department, and he never had passed a fourth grade education, but he created the University of Pennsylvania. His name was Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, shoot. I thought you were going to let me guess.
No.
I knew the answer.
I knew that you were in college over in Italy.
I knew the answer.
Probably
I
were
knew
giving
the
you
answer.
Italian history there and Latin.
So there's another line from a song. I was thinking this week about Jesus is being pushed a little bit by his disciples because they were, who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, and who wants to be first, and first will be last, and last first, all of that. That's where I came up with this least lonely, lost, and last, because the song, and you can reflect on this, people acting more like children than children.
Wow.
So this is what happens when we become older and adults and think that we've got it all together. And I think the guys that were following Jesus at that time, they were acting more like children than children.
Right.
And I don't think the sense of competition was as serious in those days. Who knows? I have no idea. I'm just guessing. But with sports and the arts and all the things that we have today, there's such a spirit of competition.
Yeah.
Who's number one, and
the winner, yeah.
And I always liked your reflection when you were doing the Special Olympics, where all the kids are winners, basically.
Yeah.
Tell that story about crossing the finish line.
It's very powerful. We were working with kids, and Lori Kaplan used to take us out. We would do benefits every year with the folks from McDonald's, and we would do the Special Olympics benefit at the big venues. We had great stars: Robin Williams, Dana Carvey, Jerry Seinfeld. And I would always tell the story about there was a kid running towards me and gets all the way down to the finish line, 40 yards in front of everybody. And it was a Down syndrome youngster, and stops. And I thought that she didn't understand. I go, no, come here, Annie, come here. You win the gold medal. Walk to me. Come here. Come across the finish line to Coach Mike. No. I said, no, you don't understand. Come here. You win, you win, you win. No, I will stay here for my friends. And then she put her hand out for her friend and her hand out for her other friend. And when she came across the finish line, she goes, together we all can win.
Yeah.
And when you think of a Down syndrome child being able to teach a very valuable lesson, I remember that I actually spoke that story at the Bohemian Grove one night back in 1987 with Craig Jones, my agent, who was a member. And there was almost a deafening silence, quiet. And then one of the Texas guys pulls his cigar out, and it turns out he had a Down syndrome child, and he went, wow! And that was, boom, they were all responding, applauding. And I think that what we find in those moments is that sense of humanity that lives in a child who's a little bit different and has seen the world but lives in heart, right? And which is certainly many Down syndrome children are the greatest avatars of unconditional love that you can be exposed to on planet Earth.
There were a couple of Mormons came to my sister-in-law's door one time, and her little girl, who I guess she was 4, maybe 5, and they said, "Is your mommy there? We would like to talk to her about Jesus." And the little girl said, "No, mommy's hitting a bottle." And the two guys are standing there. You go, "What? Mommy's hitting the bottle?" Well, she had just made sandwiches for the kid, and she was hitting the ketchup bottle like this to knock the ketchup out on the sandwiches. Mommy's hitting the bottle.
Mommy's hitting the
So
bottle.
then the little girl said, "They want to know if you're interested in Jesus Christ." And she said, "No, not today." But I was thinking
story.
about, you talking about a Down syndrome being a teacher.
Right.
Some of our best teachers are not the ones who say, "Now read this, 2 and 2 is 4, and 4 and 4 is 8. But if they take an apple or two and they show you that if you see things and you see an example in a person, it's such a stronger way to learn, and it's closer to reality.
Right.
When somebody's doing something that's right, and you want to imitate it and follow it. That's why the best teachers I ever had were the ones that live their teaching.
They live their faith, and you notice them. And it's better to have a sermon given by example than by word.
Yeah.
Right.
I know that old poem from Michel Quoss. You probably haven't memorized it like I have.
Let me hear it.
I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day. I'd rather one would walk with me than merely show the way. The eye is a better pupil and more willing than the ear. Counsel can be confusing, but example's always clear. And best of all, the teachers are those that show their deeds, for to see good put into action is what everybody needs.
Wow.
Probably should have saved that for the end.
No, I think it works right where we are.
Okay.
Because the truth is, and what you're saying is that we have so many teachers out there because of COVID-19 that they've been isolated from the kids. They've been on Zoom and Zoom Unity and Zoom Classroom. And what we need to do is as they're coming back into the classrooms and masking and hopefully getting vaccinated and getting taken care of to be with each other, is they have missed this socialization. And I've always thought, I think back of the, there were so many great priests and nuns in my life when I was a kid growing up. And I always want to, bring that to the attention of everybody who has judgment in their gut to look at somebody and think this or that. And I think of Michael Judge, the priest from New York City, who was a chaplain in the fire department and gave his life on that day of 9/11 that we just went past. And the wisdom inherent in his example of loving the men and women that he worked with so much that they took him to the altar and lay him in rest there.
Yeah. Here's a quote, now that you bring that up. It's by the priest that gave the homily at his funeral mass.
Wow.
After all the names of people were brought out from the rubble, Father Michael will greet them with his big Irish smile. He will take them by the arm and say, "Welcome. I want to take you to my Father." And so he can continue doing in his death what oftentimes he couldn't do in his life. He took these people directly to God, as he was trying to do when the rubble fell on him and killed him while he was anointing and probably hearing the last whisper of life from the person that he was bent over there at the bottom of the buildings. Michael Judge.
I hope you're proud that you made me cry. Because when I think of all the firefighters and cops and paramedics that I have worked with over the years, and those who have sacrificed and given their lives willingly and are of faith-filled, no matter what religion, it's regardless to me, it's that spiritual essence of them to sacrifice themselves in the way that they know that it is for the greater good that they do this work. And this is why it's important for us to take the lessons of 9/11, because as I've pointed out, there were millionaires and billionaires at the top of the World Trade Center waiting to be rescued. Mm-hmm. And so it's all of us. It's all of us together. And you were up in New York. You worked at St. Patrick's. You were there in the shadow of those buildings, correct?
Well, I wasn't there
No, but
yeah. Oh, no, I saw that, yeah. I remember riding down the elevator. You know, it's funny. People of the Jewish faith, persuasion, have a great deal of respect for Catholic priests. Mm-hmm. And when I lived in New York, where there are lots of very wealthy, this Jewish guy encountered me on an elevator one day, and he said, "You know, I really admire you." And I said, "Is it because I'm rich?" He said, "No, not exactly." Yes. I said, "Well, that's good because I'm not." Anyway, he said, "I have 4 Mercedes-Benz." And he said, "If I could afford it, I'd get a 5th one." He said, "Because in my life, that's all there is.
Right.
When I die, people are going to say, that guy, he did really well. He had 4 Mercedes-Benz. He was about to buy a 5th one." Wow. And I thought, it just doesn't work for me. But you and I are brought up in a different culture and a background.
Well, but there's no judgment. I have no judgment for those who hold and obtain wealth, and I have no judgment for that. I pray for them that they have a kind of an awakening that there is, as that line, I guess, by Swedenborg, the rich always want to be richer, the powerful always want more power, but you got to leave the happy alone. And that's by Swedenborg. And if you go to the Swedenborg Chapel over in the city,
I've been there,
and just sit and I've been there, you can feel, I don't know if you know much about the Swedenborg faith, but if you go on YouTube, there's a whole thing about heaven, when you get to heaven, with the Swedenborgian faith. Now, 2 people were very powerful Swedenborgians. They always carried the Swedenborgian book with them, the Book of Swedenborg. One was John Chapman, Johnny Appleseed.
Oh.
And spreading the seeds of apples all over the Ohio and Pennsylvania Valley. And if you go up, and when I was in Gettysburg, some of the greatest apples in the world are right there. Unreal. By the battlefield. The Harbaughs. I mean, that was amazing. Then the other one is Helen Keller.
Really?
And Helen Keller carried a book of Swedenborg with her all the time. And still, always until the day I die in front of children, I constantly remind them of the emotional wisdom of this brilliant woman who was asked by a young reporter. They said, "Oh, well, it must be hard for you to be blind." She said, "Well, it would be if I had no vision."
Yeah.
We see with our heart.
Yeah.
And that was Christ. And that was, I mean, to me, when you realize and you hurt, and anybody spiritual who understands that where you're eventually heading is that you're not taking things with you. But if you are lost here, and I thought that was one of my favorite lines by Dickens. I don't know if you've ever seen, or any of you folks have seen, Clint Eastwood's movie The Hereafter, about an Irish social worker by the name of, Matt Damon plays him in the role, but he's a neurodiverse psychic whose brother tries to use him here in San Francisco to make money.
Oh.
And yet he is a wise soul and studies Dickens. Dickens said in Nicholas Nickleby, "We come to know at the end of all time it's not always those that we share our blood with that become our family, but those that we might give our blood for." Now, that would be Dorothy and the Scarecrow and the
Tin Man.
And
And
the Cowardly Lion. Because at the end of the movie, when she wakes up consciously and she's back in Kansas, they're there. They're the workers at her pop's farm. And she's lived through the tornado of trying to figure things out, but home is home is home. Right?
So getting back before you quote all these different people, did Schwarzenberg, did Swedenborg or whatever?
Swedenborg, yeah.
Swedenborg. Did he have a particular faith persuasion that he came from?
He created one. He was an entrepreneur, Harry. He was as well a very brilliant philosopher. He wrote a book called Celestia Arcana, and it was because I swear, I'm not making this up, he spoke to the angels. Oh. And that's where his inherent wisdom came from. You know that because sometimes when I'm watching you give a sermon, as much mockery as I do tease you, you channel angelic light in front of that group of seniors that I sit with, and you can hear them
murmuring under their breath.
No.
When's it going to be over?
No. They just sit there and they go, "Ooh, wow." And it's a nugget of gold that sits in their soul that week and helps their spirit accommodate the times that we're in. Mm-hmm. And that's what the great priests and spiritual leaders do. Wow. And you are that for all of us. And what I try to point out to everybody all the time, so many of our priests and our sisters have suffered so much stigmatization and attacks and coldness at times that it's important to realize that a Michael Judge exists in the world. That he would saintly give his life, as the priest at his eulogy said, to guide you closer to the Savior, to the God he loved and served. Right.
So back to the competition for a minute. So the guy's playing golf with his buddies every week on Saturday, and his little kid says, "Daddy, you and Uncle Richie were playing golf. Who won? Who's number one? Who's the best?" And the father says to the little girl, "Oh, we don't compete. Your uncle and I don't compete. We just play for the fun." So the little girl says to her dad, "Dad, who had more fun this week?"
There's a did.
Who had more fun?
That's perfect. And that's for us. The great lesson of Padre and Pritch. Who had more fun this week?
Who had more fun? To the least, the last, the lost, and the lonely.
Blessings to all, prayers to all. Lift them, shift them, and gift them.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mike.
God bless. Thanks.